Is it working?
Yeah, it's just hard to see because of this. Yeah.
Is that
There we
good?
go. Yeah, it's just hard to see.
Okay. We're good, cameraman Liam?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so chapter 4, let's take a look at chapter 4. This week we're talking about Benjamin Franklin. He's one of the most enigmatic figures in American colonial history. He lived through 2 kings and saw 2 American governments formed. He lived through 1 World War and 1 revolution. And he helped write the U.S. Constitution. He was a statesman. Some of the other things that aren't mentioned here in the book is he created the library, he created the fire department.
He created a street sweeping service.
And he did?
And he was a vegetarian. So
Was he really? I didn't know that. And he created the post office. He was the first postmaster general. And so he was an institution builder. He believed in building things up and not tearing things down. But here's a thought. Was he a Christian believer? His personal behavior suggests otherwise. So, but what does his autobiography say? So, he's kind of an enigma. We're not sure. There's clear evidence that he grew up in a Calvinist home and perhaps made an early commitment to Christ, but his autobiography degenerates into a lukewarm Christian theism at best, or cold deism at worst. The truth is, the intelligent and capable, the genius Ben Franklin was a giant in the intellectual world, but in the worldview universe, he was confused and conflicted. So we're looking at him not just for what a great person he was, or an institution builder, but we're looking at what was his worldview. And so as a result of this chapter, you're going to evaluate his faith journey, and you're going to talk about his autobiography. It was kind of a rags to riches story, or is it a self-serving, egotistical story of his own self-absorption?
He was very funny.
He was very funny. That's right.
It's kind of crazy.
That's right. And I believe it was, he was never able to be a president, but he was the one that they sent back to America, or to England, with the Declaration of Independence to try to convince the king to make them independent. So he's got to have had some true grit there to be willing to go back and do that. So did he create his error, or did his error create him? So there's some very interesting writings. I read already the autobiography letter he wrote to his son. Very interesting reading. You're going to enjoy that. And it really does ponder the question of, was he really writing this so his son would know what he went through, and write his own autobiography, a rags to riches kind of story, or was he just, as Josh put it in such terms, was he just really being proud of himself and arrogant in his writing? So it'll be a very interesting paper that you'll get to write. So the paper is supposed to be 1.5 to 2 pages in length. Based on his writing, you're supposed to describe his faith journey. Your response should be typed, double-spaced, Times New Roman, 12-point font, and printed for class next week. It should be written in MLA format and include 2 citations from the text.
This chapter? Like the American literature book?
From the text.
From the autobiography.
From the autobiography, from things that he wrote, not from the textbook, from his writings. Because you're basically going to read his writings and decide what his faith journey was, and use the text in his writings as your evidence. When we do literature analysis, you have your reason and then your evidence. So
When we're quoting things, since we have to have two quotes, would we quote, so we would quote him from his readings. Would we also quote the textbook possibly, or can we use other sources such as online sources?
I would use his writings as your,
Only?
I would prefer to use,
Okay.
back up your evidence based on what he said. Let me ask you this, is he a credible writer?
Yeah.
Because it's an autobiography, so
He lived it.
he lived it, he's firsthand. So your strongest evidence is going to be from his text. From his text. And the autobiography that he wrote it to his son, and he started off with Dear Son. And he began with what was the most famous autobiography in world history. He was 62, which was extremely old for somebody to live back then, to have lived to 62. He wrote everything down for his son, and the book was composed in sections. The first part dealt with his first 24 years, and he finished it around 1771. And then at the end of the American Revolution, he started writing again in 1783, and he finished it in 1789. And the autobiography really only covers his life until 1757. There's no mention of the American Revolution in this autobiography. Why do you think he left it out?
Controversial?
Huh?
Could it be controversial?
It could have been controversial. I'm just asking. There's not a right or wrong answer because we can't ask him, hey, why'd you leave this out?
Wake up.
I'm asking you, huh?
I said, wake up.
What do you think? Why would he leave out the American Revolution in writing his autobiography to his son?
He would know what was happening, I guess, because he's
Pardon?
kind of lived through it. His son has lived through it. in a
Yeah.
His
sense.
son lived through it
So what would
already.
be the point? Because he was gearing it towards his son. If he was gearing it to future readers, I think he may have mentioned it. Or maybe people within the American Revolution, like people that were a part of it, would have had negative feelings about it. Because if he was not technically a great guy amongst people, a lot of people, but he was also, then again, there's some people that really admired him. So it would have been interesting to see if he did write it, what he would have said particularly. Because maybe he just didn't really care, maybe he had total opinions. We don't really know.
Okay, that's a theory. Does somebody have another theory?
He probably told, like, his son probably lived through the American Revolution, and he probably, if he did, he probably told his son anyway about the revolution. It's right there in his backyard, so it's like, if you're going to include something about your life, your son, or you may mention it, but I don't think you can go in detail. In this case, he actually just didn't include it, but his son may already have known everything about it, he just wants to tell him what's important.
I have a theory, but it's just my own personal theory. So as a parent of a child, and that was probably one of the most horrific things he went through in his lifetime, I wouldn't want to share the horrors of that with my child. So I would think that he saw such horrible, horrible things during that time period, and you can't really just tell the good stuff. You have to tell the good and the bad with the American Revolution. Maybe he left it out on purpose because he didn't want that part of the story in there. He wanted his son to see the hope of the country, of what it had become, not what they had gone through. Does that make sense? So I don't know, that's just a personal opinion. Like I would probably leave out the really bad stuff if I was writing my autobiography for my child, just something that horrific. So, because you had brother against brother in the American Revolution, you had families just torn apart, and I have some, just a few typed pages. They were originally handwritten, but somebody typed them up. But they were first-hand accounts from the American Revolution of my great-grandfather's father and his brothers serving in the American Revolution. And it was 6 brothers, and just the horrors that they wrote in there. And it was just a few short notes that they had written down, just about being so hungry and people losing limbs, and just, I mean, just the horror stories that came out just in that brief stuff. And I just think, well, maybe he just wanted to kind of leave that out. So that's just my personal theory. But so think about, so we're studying this autobiography of Ben Franklin and the classics of him. This is the writing rubric that we're going to be using. This is on the teacher page for you in GradeLink to help you in preparing your paper. I'm going to get out of the way of it for a second. Content and ideas. Obviously, we're going for all 6s here. Writing is confident and clearly focused. It holds the reader's attention. Relevant details enrich the writing. Organization. Writing includes a strong beginning, middle, and end with clear transitions and focused closure. Vocabulary and word choice, just vary it. Voice, writes with distinct, unique voice, point of view. Writing is skillfully adapted to the audience. Sentence fluency, consistent variety of sentence structure, and conventions. Uses consistent agreement between parts of speech. No errors in mechanics, creative and effective use of spelling strategies. If you have Grammarly, that'll help you on that one. So, and the opposite side, a 1, would be writing is extremely limited in communicating knowledge with no central theme. Writing is disorganized. And under, I can't quite make it out. With no transitions or closure, careless or inaccurate word choice, which obscures meaning. Writer's voice, point of view, shows no sense of audience. Frequent run-ons or fragments with no variety in sentence structure, and parts of speech show lack of agreement. Frequent errors in mechanics, little or no evidence of spelling strategies. And since I know all of your writing ability, I know we're not going to have any number 1s in here.
That's like if you don't write the paper. If you don't write the paper, you're going to get a 1.
Well, maybe even less than that. So.
Like, turn a blank piece of paper.
You have your name at the top, that's it.
So let's look real quick at what we're going to do this week. You're going to read lesson 1 and 2 over Benjamin Franklin. Lesson 3 is political cartoons. Those are always very fun. Lesson 5 is excerpts from Poor Richard's Almanac. And you're going to complete the following in place of the warm-up on page 66. You're going to make a list of 5 wise things that life has taught you. And you're going to bring that list to class next week, and we're going to discuss it. I prefer it be typed and printed. If you want to handwrite it, that's okay, but I prefer it be typed and printed. So 5 wise things that life has taught you.
On the concept builder E or 4E.
Pardon?
Concept builder 4E. The draw your genealogy chart. That's page 66.
It says in place of. So,
What?
We're running down part one with life lessons in place of the
So you write 5 life lessons in place of genealogy, so just 5 important life lessons.
5 wise things that life has brought.
Okay,
Because
I'm gonna write that down.
double checking my notes here. Yeah, you've got your essay, the 5 wise things, and we'll have quiz 4.
What should we study for quiz 4?
Quiz 4.
Should see.
That's a good question. I don't think I brought up quiz 4 to look at. Let me see if I can give you a hint of what to study.
Whether we need to know 5 important life things.
So,
Quiz 4 is just some multiple choice questions. I
We
believe.
like those. We like those in true and false.
I think they're going to be just some multiple choice questions about Ben Franklin. So, or as long as you've spent some time studying Ben Franklin, you'll be fine.
I kind of have to write an essay about him, so.
Yeah, you're going to write an essay about him, so you're gonna be prepared. So you've got the essay, 5 wise things. So you're not having to do a concept builder thing, and then your quiz that you've got to study for. Questions
the essay, do we bring it in for peer review next week or to turn it in?
to turn it in, final review. Yeah, y'all have graduated, no peer reviews in these classes.
Unless we're all gonna get on a Zoom call or something and be like, guys, you wanna write a paper?
I know you like peer reviews, but that was English 10 and
We
English
appreciate
8.
the 2 weeks though to write a paper.
I know, it's only 1.5 to 2 pages.
That
And it's
is,
double space. So,
And it's double
Yeah,
spaced,
that's like
and it's
a
12-point type. It's
I might
not,
change it to 12.5.
Yeah.
Write an essay, at least we can roll it.
Go like this tiny step back.
it won't be that much.
it's only gonna be about that words.
And we're halfway, this is week 4. So you're halfway through the first quarter. So,
One.
Oh, great, that's closer to the test. Wait,
Yeah.
is it at the end of the quarter, or like?
there's gonna be a test at chapter 1 through 5.
So that-
That's not next week, but the following.
Not next week.
2 weeks.
It's probably 2 weeks away.
29.
So I can let you know. So next week we have quiz 4.
Just please tell me it's not the same week as final exam.
It probably is.
Oh man, that's gonna.
Or it's the week before.
At least it's not like the final exam isn't like everything though.
Week 6 is our chapter 1 through 5 test.
So this is week 4, so 2 more weeks.
So yeah, 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks. So we will have quiz 4 next week. Since y'all are wanting, you're curious about coming up. So quiz 4 next week, 1 through 5. The following week. And then we have a quiz on week 7. Let me see what we're doing there for. I don't know that far. And we'll have a quiz on week 8.
And then that's the first quarter.
So, but the big thing will be week 6, and then it'll be all 5 chapters. It was supposed to take longer for y'all to do the quiz. That's why it seems like we have so much time. So,
Should I stop?
Smart. Smart.